Hi, and welcome back to Freakboy Runs for part 2 of the backstory of how a 61-year-old man made the insane decision to try and run a sub 3-hour marathon. So that was it. I considered myself a runner from that point forward. And I didn't go crazy or anything, but I did try to make sure I'd run. I tried to do it at least once a week. I'll have to look back at my data, but I don't think I accomplished that every single week. But I averaged probably maybe 2 or 3 times a week for the next year. And slowly built up longer and longer runs. You know, that 11-mile run I did with the club in Houston, that ended up hurting me for a few days. Not injury-wise, but it took me a while to recover from that. So I wasn't doing runs that long. But I just started building up my base and building up my pace and just growing to love it more over the next year. And then when I got to September of 2020, which was, you know, the 2-year mark for the 20,000 steps a day, which I had maintained even after I started running. The running just helped me save the time, but I kept doing the 20,000 steps a day. And I got to September of 2020, and I thought, somebody had told me, actually it was these same friends from Houston, had told me they knew about my walking step streak. And they told me that there was this running streak sort of club that if you ran a mile every day for a year straight, you could join this website and it would track your progress of your running streak. And there were guys on there that were incredible, that had gone for like 50 years, from the 70s. It was unbelievable to me, but I thought, okay, let's try that too. So in addition to my 20,000 steps per day streak, in September of 2020 I started a run streak as well. And that's not something I necessarily recommend. The reason I did it was kind of the same reason that I was continuing with the step streak. It was a motivator for me. It's just kind of the way my brain works. Once I had started that step streak, it was very motivational to me to get out there and do it every day, because I didn't want to lose the streak. You know, I guess that's ADHD behavior. I'm not sure. Just self-diagnosing there, but it was really, I found motivational, and I thought a run streak might do the same for me. And it did. Like I said, I don't necessarily recommend it, because if you run too much every day, you are going to get injured. And I did find that out. I did get injured almost immediately starting that run streak. I was doing too much. And I eventually, before I even got to 100 days, had to back off to a point where I was only doing one very slow mile per day for weeks on end to get over some pretty severe shin splints. So I learned pretty quickly that I had to moderate those miles, and that I couldn't run a lot of miles every week when I was running every day, and I couldn't run hard miles all the time. Both those lessons were learned in the early days of that run streak, and learned the hard way with those shin splints, also with Achilles problems. It was a lot of pain and a lot of learning things the hard way at first. And so I definitely don't really recommend it. You know, I suppose if you're the type of person that derives the motivation from it the way I do, maybe you can make it work in your favor. But there's probably more risks to it than rewards for most people. So proceed with caution is what I would say in that regard. This is a beautiful spot. Just have to pause here and just take a look at the creek. It's under a nice canopy here on the bridge. This is definitely one of the reasons I run this place. Is special to me. But anyways, yeah, so after really another full year now of a run streak, it took me that whole year before I built up enough courage to actually run a race. You know, it's really kind of sad when I think back on it. I feel like I wasted a lot of opportunity there to be involved and have fun racing, but I guess I considered myself a runner, but I just didn't have the confidence. I didn't see myself racing. And I give so much credit to my friends Don and Tracy, who encouraged me and convinced me that racing was fun, and even came from Houston up to Dallas to run with me in my first race in September of 2021. And that's when it really hit me. I had been running every day at that point for a year. And there was a thing called the Plano Balloon Festival taking place here in this same park where I run and walk all the time. And they had a 5K and a 10K. And mind you, that was, let's see, that was in the middle of COVID, right? Yeah, that was in the middle of COVID. So the festival was kind of limited, but they did have these two road races. They inflated a bunch of hot air balloons and did a 10K and a 5K the same morning, and they had this option that you could sign up for both. And yeah, I just decided to go for it. Thought, well, if I'm racing, let's race. And so I did a 10K. It started at 7 a.m. managed to get, I don't know, maybe 35-45 minutes rest after the 10K, and then a 5K. I think started at 9 or 9:30. I don't remember the exact start time. It was hot. You know, that was in September, but September in Texas is still pretty darn hot. And then I ran that 5K. I exceeded all my expectations. I ended up placing second in my age group in both races. And that's what was the impetus for me to start racing. It was just that experience, you know, the experience of the race itself and the community, how cool everybody was, and just meeting people and talking to people after the races. And they had a breakfast for us afterwards. Just being with my close friends. It was incredible. It was a really special experience, and I was hooked at that point on racing. So, you know, that's kind of the whole backstory, I suppose. You know, I guess I could include the next couple of races, because that was September. And then at the end of October, there was a half marathon called the Houston Half. And my friends, same ones that had encouraged me all this time and supported me, asked me to come down and run that Houston Half with them. And I did that. Had another great experience. And then as soon as I got back home after spending that weekend running that race with them in Houston, I signed up for the Dallas Marathon for December of 2021. Just went for it. And I did that first marathon with no actual training plan, which I don't recommend at all. I did a lot of running, but I wasn't following a formal plan. I knew that I was supposed to build up my long runs on a weekly basis. So I just found some internet plan that showed a long run progression leading up to the, you know, final marathon. And I think it also indicated there, or maybe my friends told me, that I needed to do a taper. So that's kind of as much of a plan as I was able to follow for that first marathon. Was just do a long run and build it up longer and longer every Sunday, and then taper for 2 weeks. But I only did that for like the last maybe, I guess, 8 weeks, or the last 7 or 8 weeks leading up to the marathon. And then I ran that first Dallas Marathon at the end of 2021. And so I guess that would complete the backstory. I had hoped at the time that maybe I can magically get a Boston qualifying time on my first try. It wasn't meant to be. That didn't happen. I would have needed 3 hours and 50 minutes to qualify for the next available chance to run the Boston Marathon. I didn't make that. I ran a 4:02. But I was pretty happy with that, considering that I didn't know what the heck I was doing at all. And it was a good learning experience to find out that you can't just go run a marathon without a proper training plan. I say it was a good learning experience, although the next couple of marathons I ran, I used the same approach. But it's all a learning experience. And some things you end up having to learn the hard way. You know, and that's what documenting this journey is all about. Because I'm sure there are going to be more things that I have to learn the hard way. And hopefully there's some things that I learn from others. You know, and that's been also a big part of my experience so far, is trying to learn from my friends that were runners, but also from other YouTube channels. You know, and I want to especially give a shout out to Ben and Mary over on This Messy Happy, which is the YouTube channel that I discovered at some point in 2022 after those first 3 marathons of not really knowing what I was doing. And they helped me a lot. And so I highly recommend to anybody, even non-runners, going to their channel and checking them out at This Messy Happy, because they're wonderful people and have helped me immensely. Well, that concludes the Freakboy backstory, at least for the time being. There may be some other tidbits I think of later that are worth sharing, but for now, we're going to call it a wrap. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share and comment, and we'll see you again next time on Freakboy Runs. Freakboy out!